Because when she came into the WNBA, for 22 plus years, they had been flying commercial. They were begging for chartered flights. She arrives there, and 2 weeks later, they got chartered flights.
That's right, you heard it. The one and only Stephen A. Smith is making waves again, but this time, it's not just his usual scorching takes on the NBA. Oh no, this time he's turning his attention to the WNBA and the treatment of one of the league's brightest stars, Caitlin Clark. In a powerful statement, Smith didn't hold back, calling out the blatant resentment some players and figures in the league have for Clark, despite everything she's done to elevate the game. The reality, Caitlin Clark's presence in the WNBA is nothing short of a game changer, from bringing in new fans to improving player conditions and changing the perception of women's basketball. She's been nothing but a force for good, yet somehow there's still a faction of players, most notably Angel Reese and Aja Wilson, who seem to despise the very rise of Clark. They've openly shown their disdain, even though Caitlin has done nothing but lift up the entire league.
She automatically and instantaneously improved the conditions. Attendance is still lagging. WNBA is still losing money compared to what you would hope it would earn, but clearly things are on an upward trending trajectory. It's improving, and she has everything to do with it.
But Stephen A. Smith doesn't mince words. He sees through the jealousy and the resentment. He's not here for this nonsense, and neither should you be. As Smith puts it, Clark isn't the problem. The issue lies in how the system has mistreated so many talented athletes, especially black players, for decades. It's the systemic forces that have held them back, not Caitlin Clark's success.
Rookie of the Year race is over, but we just have to understand that when a transformational figure enters the fray, you got to pause and then isolate and compartmentalize and give them the love that they're due. And in this case, it belongs to Caitlin Clark.
And when Clark steps up to improve conditions across the board, like securing charter flights for players, it's clear she's fighting for everyone, not just herself. In this video, we're going to break down exactly what's going on. Why is Stephen A. Smith so fired up? Why is there so much tension between Caitlin Clark and some of the league's stars? And most importantly, why does it seem like the WNBA is struggling to embrace the very change it desperately needs? Stick around because we're about to dive into all of it.
Caitlin Clark, what she's doing doesn't minimize what they've done, but we should have been giving her the credit. We saw the ratings, we saw the merchandise sales, we saw the attendance, but y'all want to make it about something else. Oh, what about the women that laid the foundation? What about this? What about it? That ain't got nothing to do with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is box office. She's doing this. And instead of giving her credit, y'all tried to make it about, oh, y'all poo-pooing the old guard. Y'all never talked about the old guard like this. Nah, I ain't gonna let it slide.
Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back in his criticism of the WNBA's treatment of Caitlin Clark. The outspoken commentator, known for his no-nonsense style, recently called out the league for how they've treated Clark, who has single-handedly elevated the game in a way few could have predicted. Smith's frustration isn't just about Caitlin's individual success, but about the broader systemic issues at play. He's angry because some in the league, particularly figures like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson, have displayed a shocking amount of resentment toward Clark. But why? What exactly has Caitlin Clark done wrong? The answer is simple. Caitlin Clark hasn't done anything wrong. If anything, she's done everything right. She's turned heads with her electrifying play on the court, but her influence stretches beyond that. She's become a household name, boosting the visibility of the WNBA in ways that go far beyond what anyone else in the league has accomplished. From record-breaking performances to her undeniable charisma, Clark has proven herself not just as a talented athlete, but as a cultural force. Yet despite all of this, Stephen A. Smith points out that certain WNBA players and figures have chosen to lash out at her instead of embracing her impact.
She just absolutely did it all and became a magnet for attention and an icon for sports fans, certainly little girls, certainly mine as well, playing her basketball and watching her play.
Smith's commentary highlights something deeper. He's not just angry at the personal attacks on Caitlin Clark. He's furious about the systemic issues within the WNBA that have held back black athletes for so long. In his view, the league has spent decades being held down by a system that favors certain individuals. And when someone like Caitlin Clark, who happens to be white, comes along and starts changing things for the better, some players can't handle it. This resentment, as Smith says, is misplaced. Instead of being angry at Clark, the focus should be on the people who have have allowed these systemic issues to persist for so long. Caitlin Clark's rise to stardom has coincided with some major changes in the WNBA, and Stephen A. Smith doesn't think it's a coincidence. Just 2 weeks after Clark joined the league, one of the biggest issues that players had been fighting for, charter flights, was finally addressed. This had been a decades-long battle, with players begging for better travel conditions, and within a very short time of Clark's arrival, those conditions were drastically improved. Smith points out that Clark didn't come in and demand anything for herself. She simply showed up, played hard, and immediately made a difference for the entire league. Yet there are still players who can't seem to appreciate that.
Did it with the spotlight on her at a very young age. Fame is hitting this young lady's life. And very, very rarely did I see a misstep or something that I wouldn't want to show my daughter. Literally every step of the way, it's just like, watch her, watch how she plays, watch how she handles her business.
So why is there such a disconnect? Why are people like Aja Wilson and Angel Reese lashing out when Clark is only trying to help? According to Smith, it's simple. Jealousy and fear. Fear of change. Fear of the rising tide that Caitlin Clark represents. And jealousy that someone who hasn't faced the same struggles as black players is now in a position to help make their lives better. But this resentment is exactly what's holding the WNBA back from truly progressing. Instead of embracing a star who is changing the game, some players are choosing to stay stuck in the past, angry at a system they claim to want to change, but failing to see that Caitlin Clark is exactly the ally they need. Caitlin Clark didn't just enter the WNBA as a player, she entered as a catalyst for change. When Clark hit the court, it wasn't just her stellar shooting that caught everyone's attention, it was her undeniable influence on the league as a whole. From day one, she's been a force for progress, pushing the WNBA into new territory and making the sport more accessible to the public. But here's the thing, she didn't do it by changing who she was. She did it by being herself, authentic, relentless, and unapologetically competitive, and in the process, she forced the league to reckon with the outdated systems that were holding it back.
Tell me when the last time all these players been in the league all this time.
Yes.
You name all the prominent players. Tell me the time the WNBA has had this much buzz. I'll wait. Everybody in the chat that y'all was saying, oh, these women been in the league before Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Tell me the time they had this much buzz. Tell me the time they had this many eyes on the draft. Tell me this many times they had watching WNBA preseason game. I'm just waiting. Go ahead, Phil. Go ahead, chat. Take off.
One of the most immediate and game-changing impacts Clark had was the improvement in player conditions. For years, WNBA players had been fighting for better travel accommodations, with many taking commercial flights and struggling with long, grueling schedules. This was an issue that had been ignored for decades, despite the consistent pleas from players for better treatment. Then, just weeks after Caitlin Clark's arrival, the WNBA finally implemented charter flights for the players, a monumental victory that had been long awaited by the athletes who had pushed so hard for it. This wasn't just a small improvement, it was a seismic shift in how the league treated its players, one that made a significant difference in their lives. But here's the kicker, Caitlin Clark didn't ask for this. She didn't demand it as a condition of her joining the league. She simply showed up, did her job, and inspired change without even trying. But Clark's influence goes beyond just the logistical improvements. She's changed the entire perception of women's basketball. Before Clark, the WNBA had been struggling to break through in the mainstream. Despite years of hard work from countless talented players, the league had trouble drawing in the same level of attention as other major sports. Caitlin Clark's arrival, however, brought with it a massive surge of interest. Her name became synonymous with excellence, and her performances became must-watch events. Television ratings for WNBA games soared, and media coverage of women's basketball reached new heights. Clark didn't just boost her own profile, she boosted the profile of the entire league, and the reality is, the WNBA hasn't been the same since. But this wasn't just about numbers on a screen. Caitlin Clark's rise has sparked a cultural shift. Her immense popularity has also brought a new generation of fans into the fold, many of whom are now paying attention to the WNBA for the first time. These fans aren't just coming for Clark, they're coming for the entire league, eager to see the incredible talent that's been on display all along. With the spotlight on the WNBA, players who may have flown under the radar before are now getting the recognition they deserve. This is a direct result of Clark's influence and the wave of energy she brought to the sport. The WNBA is no longer a niche league, it's becoming a mainstay in the sports world, and Caitlin Clark is at the forefront of that transformation. Yet despite all of this, some players, most notably Angel Reese and A'ja Wilson, seem unwilling to embrace Clark's impact. They continue to harbor resentment toward her, seemingly unable to see the bigger picture. This is where the true problem lies. Instead of viewing Clark as an ally who is working to make the game better for everyone, they seem to view her as a threat. But what they don't understand is that Clark isn't just fighting for her own success. She's fighting for the success of the entire league, for everyone who has ever been overlooked, underappreciated, or denied the recognition they deserve. By lifting the profile of women's basketball, she's making it easier for everyone to succeed. The real question is, why wouldn't they want to support that? The tension surrounding Caitlin Clark's rise in the WNBA isn't just a matter of personal differences, it's symptomatic of a deeper issue within the league. While Caitlin Clark's success has been a boon for the WNBA, sparking increased interest, higher ratings, and tangible improvements for the players, it's also exposed the lingering resentment some players have toward her. The real question here is, why is Clark being resented for something that has benefited everyone? First, let's address the elephant in the room, race. Caitlin Clark's success comes at a time when the WNBA is made up predominantly of black athletes. For decades, black women have carried the league on their shoulders, and their talent has propelled the WNBA into the national spotlight. However, the league has faced systemic issues of underfunding, lack of media attention, and for many years, very little mainstream support. So when Caitlin Clark, a white player, arrives and begins to receive unprecedented attention, some in the league, like Angel Reese and A'ja Wilson, feel a sense of injustice. They wonder why someone who hasn't faced the same struggles as them is now benefiting from the spotlight they fought for so long to earn. This is where the resentment begins to brew.
What Caitlin Clark does is kind of simple, really. She shows up at games, she signs autographs, she talks to little girls wearing jerseys, she smiles to the crowd, and then here's the most important thing. She competes like a maniac. I mean like a maniac.
But here's the crucial part that some of these players are missing. Caitlin Clark isn't taking anything from them. In fact, she's doing the exact opposite. Clark's meteoric rise has brought attention not just to herself, but to the entire league. She's the rising tide that's lifting all boats. The more media attention, sponsorships, and viewership the WNBA gets, the more opportunities there are for every player, especially the ones who have been around the longest. Her success has opened doors that were previously closed, and that's exactly what the league has needed for years. Clark didn't come into the WNBA to overshadow anyone. She came to elevate it, but this sense of entitlement and frustration from some players, particularly those like Reese and Wilson, shows a deeper issue, a lack of understanding of how far the league has to go. Yes, black athletes have been the backbone of the WNBA, and yes, they faced unimaginable obstacles, but Caitlin Clark's presence in the league isn't a threat to that legacy, it's a catalyst for change. In fact, her rise could be seen as an opportunity to address many of the inequities that have plagued the WNBA for years. The resentment shouldn't be aimed at Clark, it should be aimed at the system that has allowed these inequities to persist in the first place. Stephen A. Smith nails it when he calls out this misplaced resentment. His point is that the real problem isn't Caitlin Clark herself, but the white-dominated structures outside the league that have consistently denied black women the recognition, pay, and opportunities they deserve. Clark's role in bringing about change in the league, like securing charter flights and raising the profile of the WNBA, is the kind of progress that should be celebrated, not scorned. What Reese, Wilson, and others need to realize is that when Caitlin Clark succeeds, the whole league benefits. The doors she's helping open aren't just for her, they're for everyone who has ever been overlooked, every athlete who has had to fight for respect and visibility in a world that has too often ignored them. The animosity some players are directing at Caitlin Clark reveals an even bigger issue, a resistance to progress. It's not just a resistance to Clark herself, but a resistance to change. Some within the league are still clinging to outdated ideas about who deserves success and how it should be achieved. But the truth is that the WNBA can't afford to stay stuck in the past, clinging to a limited mindset. The league needs change, and Caitlin Clark is exactly the kind of change it needs. What the league needs is unity, support for one another, and a shared commitment to making the game better for everyone involved. The fact that Clark is being treated this way, despite all she's done to elevate the WNBA, shows just how difficult it is to break through long-standing biases and systemic issues, even within the league itself. But as Stephen A. Smith so passionately pointed out, the issue isn't Caitlin Clark, it's the system. The sooner the league acknowledges this and embraces the progress Clark represents, the better off the WNBA will be. This isn't about division, this is about evolution, and Caitlin Clark's success is the evolution the WNBA so desperately needs. As much as some players in the league are resisting change, it's also crucial to recognize that the WNBA's future depends on embracing these shifts. The league has long been underfunded, underappreciated, and overshadowed by its male counterparts. For years, players have fought tooth and nail to be treated as equals to NBA players, yet the financial and media disparity remains staggering. Caitlin Clark, whether intentional or not, has become the face of a new wave of visibility for the WNBA. She's brought fans, sponsorships, and a level of excitement that the league has desperately needed. The resentment directed at her then isn't just a personal attack, it's a reflection of the growing pains the league is experiencing as it attempts to adjust to this new reality. The WNBA has the opportunity to embrace Caitlin Clark's influence, not just as a star player, but as a bridge to a brighter future. By shifting the focus from infighting to collaboration, the league could take its next step toward becoming a powerhouse in women's sports. Clark's presence highlights a truth many are hesitant to confront. The system that has long held black players back is crumbling. It's being replaced by new opportunities, new visibility, and new voices. Whether some players are ready to accept it or not, Caitlin Clark is pushing the WNBA into a future where change isn't just inevitable, it's essential. This is the time to unite, to build on the momentum she's created, and to make the WNBA the global force it was always meant to be. In the end, the real takeaway from this entire situation isn't about Caitlin Clark being resented or the personal differences within the league. It's about the change the WNBA so desperately needed. Caitlin Clark has come in, made an impact, and started pushing the league into new territory, opening doors that were previously closed. While there will always be resistance to change, it's crucial to see that Clark's rise is a win for everyone in the WNBA, not just herself. She's a beacon of hope for a better future, one where all players can thrive and the game of women's basketball can reach its true potential. As Stephen A. Smith pointed out, the real enemy isn't Caitlin Clark. It's the outdated system that has held the WNBA back for so long. Instead of resenting the players who have the power to change the game, it's time for the league to come together and embrace the progress they fought for. Caitlin Clark didn't come into the WNBA to overshadow anyone. She came to help elevate the entire league, and if some players can see that, they'll understand that a rising tide lifts all boats. The WNBA stands at a crossroads. Will it continue to be bogged down by division and resentment, or will it embrace the change that's been ushered in by stars like Caitlin Clark? If the league chooses unity, collaboration, and progress, there's no telling how far it can go. Caitlin Clark is leading the charge, but it's up to the rest of the league to join her in pushing the WNBA to the next level. The future of women's basketball is bright, but only if the league can recognize that this moment of change is one they all have the power to shape together. Caitlin Clark has proven that she's not just a player, she's a game changer. Whether some players in the league want to admit it or not, her success is a catalyst for a brighter future for everyone. It's time to stop fighting the progress and start embracing it. The WNBA is on the verge of something great, and Caitlin Clark will be remembered as the one who helped lead it there. The question is, will the rest of the league choose to support her and ride that wave of change? Or will they let this moment slip away? Only time will tell.